Energy tech doesn't move forward alone, and neither should you. Energy Tech Cypher brings together the founders, investors, operators, and corporates shaping what's next. From innovation trends to data-driven insights, this is where the ecosystem connects, collaborates, and moves. Find your place in the ecosystem at energytechcypher.com. That's Cypher as in CYPHER, where we bring the community together online and in person. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Energy Tech Startup podcast. And today I'm really excited to have with us Mitra Miller, who is the current president of HAN, which is Houston Angel Network. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here, Mitra.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
So to get started, tell us about HAN. What is it and how did it get started?
I love that question because actually, this is our 25th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
We are the oldest angel group in the state of Texas and one of the 5 oldest groups nationally. So we started, we sort of started in 1998. There's a little backstory there, but we call the official formation of the group 2001. So we are a group of independent, accredited investors who get together and collaboratively source, screen, and evaluate deals in energy, technology, life sciences, consumer, and aerospace. In other words, everything Houston does. It's also easier to say what we don't do, which is we don't do real estate, restaurants, and services businesses. That's what we don't invest in. But anything that is venture backable, venture scalable, not that they have to go the venture route, but that's usually the metric that we use for what we're looking at.
Okay, great. And tell us a little bit about, before we dive further into Han, like your background. And from my understanding, you were part of starting Han from the beginning. No?
Oh, gosh, no.
No, okay.
I'm not that old.
Okay, no, of course not. No, but I mean, who knows? You could have just been in college thinking about Han.
Technically, I'm old enough to have been there, but I was not an accredited investor when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So I was in Austin back in 1998 as part of the dot-com boom. So I was in a venture development studio fund combination there, worked on a series of startups, helped co-found one of them, which was an absolute blast, worked in several others as an executive advisor. Then I had kids, moved to part-time, and then we moved to Houston. So my husband also did startups for a long, long time in Austin. And then he decided with 2 little kids. So for those of you who are in startups, typically the cycles are up and down. And in a down cycle, like post.com, he said, one of us needs a grown-up job with benefits and a regular paycheck because, we've got these 2 little kids. So he came to Houston, got a job here, and we just absolutely love Houston. Loved Austin, but Houston's fantastic. So that's what brought us to Houston. I continued working with startups, advising them. I started investing my own money in early-stage companies 14 years ago. And about 6-7 years ago, I realized I love this. It's the natural evolution. Once you've worked in startups, you advise startups, you start investing in startups, then you really want to get serious. And you realize you're bringing that whole skill set together. So I leaned in. That's when I joined Han. And I've been incredibly active there, but also doing some of my own work on the side. So,
and I guess, your background having been, part of the dot-com boom, there must have been so much learnings the hard way.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you take that back? And one of my questions is, are startups smarter now than they were before in terms of we've learned? No, the answer is no.
So, okay. Yeah. So in general, is the ecosystem smarter?
Yeah.
In many ways, yes, because we didn't have an ecosystem back then. And honestly, that's back to when Han got started. So kind of coming back to Nada's earlier question, here in Houston, while I'm doing .com over in Austin, here in Houston, they were creating, and they knew they needed an ecosystem to support early stage innovation. And so that's when the Houston Technology Center got started. And one of the many initiatives that came out of that was the Houston Angel Network. So our co-founders are actually Paul Frazan, who is the head of HTC, and the chairman of HTC at that time, Lloyd Benson III. So we'll be honoring both of them at a big banquet later this year for our 25th anniversary. But the point is that when you're creating an ecosystem, they knew that you support the founders, you need resources, you need service providers, but you need investors.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have people who understand how to invest in this asset class and that capital is mobilized and ready to go, you really aren't going to be able to build a strong ecosystem. And they have to end up going to the coasts for their money instead of getting it here in Houston.
Yeah.
So that's how Han got launched.
And my question was more, with your own personal experience, how does that influence your life now as an investor? What's the lens that it's given you?
You mean my background?
Yeah, your background in product and launching.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually think having been someone who's been in startups changes everything as an investor. While I love the fact that there are many people who are investors with deep expertise in their domain, and they have connections, and they have a great checkbook, if they haven't had the lived experience of, honestly, all-nighters, right? We were talking about all-nighters, having to make payroll, what risk really is. And I think for a lot of people, if they've worked inside of large corporations where they avoid risk at all cost because people die, right? Energy, life sciences, people die when there's risk. We're in a startup, we're all about risk every single day. And so having investors who understand and have a similar mindset and can respect that the founder needs to do that and can coach them through that, I think is really important. And so having been on that journey, I think some of the very best early stage investors are exited founders who can say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, I promise you're going to survive. By the way, call this guy, call that gal, they're going to help you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading a quote that someone had posted on LinkedIn from the CEO of NVIDIA, where someone asked him, what would you do if you were to start over 20 years, if you were to go back in time 20 years? And he said, I wouldn't start my own company. And I think he said that because he's like, everything falls on your shoulders in the end, the board is always on you. Like if anything goes wrong, it's all on you. It's a lot of responsibility and accountability. And not everyone is cut out for that. And you have to kind of make a decision if that's the life that you want to live.
Agreed. And I think there are so many different paths for founders. So there's a local founder that I'll talk to. He'll remain nameless, but he's IPO'd and it's gone really well. But he said, at every single stage, I thought, if I just get my seed stage done, if I just get my Series A done, if I just, whatever. And then when I IPO, it's all going to get easier. And you know what? He's like, every time it just gets harder.
Yeah.
He's like, now I've IPO'd and let me tell you how hard this is, because now I'm answering to the street and the analysts and all this. It's just harder than ever. He's like, man, the pre-seed stage wasn't so bad. But I think it's like life. Yeah. Everything we go through prepares us for the next stage, right? If we think about where we are right now, we're all parents, right? If we hadn't had all the lived experiences that we had and all the dumb things we did, we wouldn't be able to coach our own kids. So I think it's very similar with being a founder, is every stage is preparing you. If you look at it that way, it's preparing you for the next one. But there are obviously a lot of founders who also don't want to stay in long term and they turn over the reins to somebody else. And that can be a great way for the company to keep going and succeed that way. So, but yeah, I've certainly heard that from others.
Yeah, it requires a lot of resilience and grit, right?
Oh my goodness, yes.
So what do you tell, as you've been the president of Han for how long now?
Only about 6 months.
About 6 months, yeah.
But you were incoming for a while.
But you've been vice president for a while.
So what happens is so the vice president is the president-elect.
Okay.
So I was on the board for 3 years. Then I was VP and president-elect for 2 years. Yeah. Now I'm president for 2 years, and then I'll be board chair for 2 years. So that's our succession
interesting.
progression. So so there's a line. So we know. So we already know who our current VP is and that she's going to be our next president. Right. So if you all know Chantel Jordan, she's amazing.
She's amazing.
We're very excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
No, you guys have a fabulous team, and everyone I meet at Han, just super, super impressive. How do you work? A lot of these people come from corporate, have 10, 20 years of great experience, and now they want to go into investing, but not necessarily have that background, but are curious. So how do you kind of train them, and how do you help them start thinking differently about investing in a company versus like the way you invest in the stock market?
Oh my goodness. So Han is a nonprofit and it's very small and we try to keep dues as reasonable as possible. So we do have some initial training, but everybody is a volunteer except our managing director, Samia. So Samia, she's Wonder Woman. She does a lot, but she's our full-time person. I'm a volunteer. Everybody else you meet from Han is a volunteer. So what we do is we learn together. It's an experiential thing. So we have some early training, but really what happens, and honestly, it's like so much of life, learning by doing. So get in and screen deals, learn how to talk to founders, follow a lot. What we do is we pair people up with an experienced member so they can see what questions you ought to ask when you're screening, what questions you ought to ask at a pitch, what questions you need to go into for due diligence. And then we do, like this summer, we're going to have an online series of educational events for members to really go deep on some of these things. What is an angel portfolio? How do you think about it, given the risk ROI of angel deals? How do you do deep due diligence? And what are the basic questions you ought to be asking? So the Angel Capital Association is a national organization that almost all angel groups belong to. So it's a nonprofit. And they actually have a lot of content as well. So as a member, all of our members, when they join Han, get access to a lot of resource through the ACA, which is fantastic because they give that to all the angel groups. So we're all getting similar education. Then we do our specific education within our group because obviously we're looking at different deals from somebody in other groups. But it's just really a learning by doing. And it's truly, I keep telling people, the more you dive in, the more you're going to get out of it. Like everything we do. And what I will say is, it is radically different from almost anything else they've ever experienced. I mean, this is the riskiest asset class, full stop. Some people could say, oh, well, crypto. I don't know. But I will tell you that in normal business asset classes, this one's crazy. And angel's even a little riskier, potential higher ROI than even venture, right? Because we're that half a stage right before they get to a VC. So how to think about that and how to create a portfolio, that's where I'm not a financial advisor or an accountant, so I'm not going to be able to give them advice, but I can say based on my experience, I allocate a very small percentage of my overall portfolio. And here's how I've been diversifying over years in terms of types of deals, how long they're going to take to exit, the risk factor, the potential ROI, et cetera, and how you build a portfolio. But again, we just do that collaboratively. We all learn from each other. And so that's really how we get it done. We have a little bit of regular programming, but it's an experiential thing.
Yeah, no, and I know everyone who's been part of Han is like kind of echoed exactly what you're saying, that we just kind of learn together and learn from each other.
Very
and
much.
I think that collaborative way of learning is also, I think it just expands people's horizon a lot quicker. So one of the founders yesterday was asking me, after we had our Founders and Funders Fusion, and Mitra was there telling us a little bit about Han and how you guys operate. So they came up to me and they said, yes, how do I pitch to Han? And so how would you respond to that? How do you get into that room where you're pitching in front of investors at Han?
That is a great question. So first thing is actually on our website, which is HoustonAngelNetwork.org. And one thing I do want to say is we do work nationally. So any company in the United States that thinks that they fit what we're looking for can apply. So we have a little tool on our website where they can do a quick self-evaluation to see if they're ready for us. It'll give you a score. And I don't know why some founders ignore the score. Like if you get a bad score, wait, go look at that.
I was going to say, it's because most founders are men and they ignore the score.
It's interesting. It's like you scored a 22, on a scale of 100. So maybe go fix some of those things before you apply. But that tool is there, so that can be very helpful. We do have a small application fee of $100 because, again, we're all volunteers. So to apply, we want people to be serious. So we want you to use the tool. We want you to know you're ready, and then you apply. But to have success, to answer your question, Nada, is we want to see a company that is what we would say is ready for investment or investable. And that would be and it's a little different in every sector, right? Obviously, if you're a clean tech startup versus a life sciences startup versus a tech startup or consumer goods, very different metrics, right? In consumer, you need to be revenue positive and at a certain level. Whereas obviously, if you're doing deep tech or energy or something else, it might be, are you TRL 4 or 5, right? It's going to be a little different. But what we do want to see, we want to see a clear vision. We want to see an outstanding founder. We want to see more than one person. So solopreneurs, that's not investable yet. Because actually, one of the very first tests for me personally is the founder's ability to recruit top-tier people to work with them on this crazy idea that they've got. Can they convince somebody, hopefully smarter than they are, to hitch their wagon to them and do this thing? And that tells me that A, you've got something real because you've got smart people who agree with you. And number two, you've got that leadership ability to get those people to come and do this with you. And thirdly, that you're willing to hire people smarter than you, right? And that you've got the humility to bring in those people. So when I see a founder who has surrounded themselves, I don't mean to be unkind, but with B- players, and all of them are like that, that's a warning sign right there. So vision, founder, team, and then it's going to be ability to execute on a profitable business. The bottom line is all of business, and you all know this so well, but this is something that I think founders miss. They are so excited about the genius of their idea or the IP behind it and how it's going to change the world, but they actually haven't figured out how to make money. The reason why these things work is because essentially businesses, to borrow a friend of mine's phrase, they're cash flow machines, right? If you're not a cash flow machine, and you don't have to be cash flowing today, but there needs to be a clear path to get you to be a cash flow machine, because that's where value comes in. And if you're not that, and you don't have a way to show that customers really will pay for this with whatever a healthy margin is in your business, and that's different for different businesses, then you don't really have something that's investable. And then the final thing is going to be, I always look at advisors and backers. I want to see that, again, have you attracted top quality advisors and backers who, again, understand your vision, they understand your industry, and they're willing to get involved here and probably write checks to support your vision. So all of those things come together, and there's a lot under every single one of those items. But I would say that's kind of what we're looking for in a nutshell.
So if I can push back a little bit on the application process. So I think anyone who does enterprise sales knows you got to find your champion before you put in an answer to an RFP. And so when I look at the Houston Angel Network, my first thought is, how do I find the person who's going to get excited about my deal? Or if I do score a 22, they're still going to be the standard bearer within the organization. Is that something that happens at Hahn? Is that something that happens at other angel groups?
It can. So Hahn is not just about capital. Right. We're also about counsel and connections. So we have extraordinary members. And the whole point and the great thing about having a huge group like ours with over 100 people with deep expertise is you might meet a potential advisor. But you can you can come in and you may not get the check, but you might find that one person who looks at it and says, I get it. I understand. Let me work with you on this. And it might be 6 or 12 months before you're really ready for that check, but you find that person. Or they might be able to introduce you to that person. One of the things that I do with founders is I frequently say, who's your dream advisor and who's your dream investor? And they always know who they are. It's like, do you know them yet? Have you found them? How do you get connected to them? If you go figure that out, and yes, it is hard. It is very hard. I'm not telling you something that's easy, but if you want to be successful, you're going to do way harder things than try to get in touch with this amazing person who happens to be in this role at this major energy company, right? Especially if they happen to live in your town. You can find them. Somehow you'll find them.
Stalk them.
Well, I try not to say stalk
Stalking's not
them.
the right word.
them.
So my question is, how do you find that mentor within Han? Because you don't necessarily want to throw the application in asking for money if you're really looking for guidance and mentorship.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will say many of our members are in other organizations where they can get those connections, right? They're affiliated with ETN. They're affiliated with Greentown Labs, or the ION. They're affiliated with Global Energy Mentors, right? I think there are so many places where you can find those people, but always think about the people the characteristics, your ICP of your advisor, and then figure out how to go find them. And you're right. Is there a way to get in touch with all of Han and kind of surf who we are? No, because it's a private organization. And even our pitch meetings, we don't publicize because the commitment we make to founders is only accredited investors will be in the room. This is a private pitch because there are SEC laws governing all of this. So we have to be kind of careful. So our members, unless they publicize it on LinkedIn, and some of them do, but if they don't put it on LinkedIn, then it's hard to find them. But most of us are like me. If you say, here's the kind of person I'm looking for, Mitra, if I know that person, I'll say, oh, okay, I'll make an introduction. I can't invest in all of the wonderful founders I meet. I cannot invest in all of the brilliant technologies that I want to see exist. But I can do 5 minutes to make a connection or give them a little bit of advice or say, go talk to Nada and Jason. They know everything, right?
So maybe the advice here for founders who are listening is, if someone does self-identify as being a member of Han, it's sort of an invitation to say hello, not necessarily to say, give me a check today.
No.
But it's this is how you network and build a relationship so you can maybe find the right member who could be that targeted advisor within the ecosystem.
That is so true. And you said a key word there, Jason, which is relationship. And while we have lots of founders come to us cold, before we invest, we need to get to know them a bit. Relationship. I don't think people realize it is not a check. It is a marriage. And these people are going to be nagging you for the next 5, 8, however many years it takes till you exit. And you want to have a great relationship with them. Spending some time getting to know them is important. And my best investments, the ones where I have the best relationships with the founders, frankly, we've known each other for a while. And sometimes I'm stalking them. Are you going to let me invest already? Right? So I'm like, hey, you opened up a round and you didn't tell me yet? We want to get in.
Yeah.
So that happened. But relationships is everything in every business, but definitely in this business as well, because it's money and because we truly are invested in our founders' success.
Yeah. It's funny. We're running a liftoff program to train entrepreneurs on the process of raising capital.
Yeah.
I was reflecting over the weekend as I was drafting materials that a lot of investors talk about it as being a marriage. And when I was 22 and told this the first time, I was like, I don't know what that means. Is that just we're going to be together a long time? And now that I'm, whatever I am, 38 now, and I look back.
You're an old man there, right?
I look back and like, oh, this is what it means to be, because I've been married now for a while and been with Yamini for, since 2012. And I'm like, okay, it's the relationship is when relationships are good, they work really well, and it's a true partnership. And I don't think I understood that when I was young. I was just thinking, oh, it's just two people who are stuck together. But really, the good relationships empower each other.
Yes.
But
if they don't,
then
they
it's terrible.
Can go
then it's
south,
toxic,
right? And then
And
I have seen too many toxic relationships between founders and their investors.
Yeah.
It can turn very adversarial and as bitter as any divorce you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that is a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I think a solvable one with good communication and active engagement, right? So if we want, so agree.
Yeah. And having seen what a toxic divorce looks like, I'm like, okay, this can suck the soul out of anybody. And that's why it's so important to qualify earlier. What does a good relationship look like? And I had the opportunity to listen to a few founders who've raised a Series B now, and they talk about a lot of times from their experience of raising capital, they want to understand how the investor thinks. So when things get tough, they understand that it is truly going to be a partnership or an additive relationship. And so when we come back to talking about finding those mentors and finding those early investors, it is as much about finding someone who's aligned on like mission and purpose, and it is more than just a blank check, because it's a relationship that has to take you to exit or IPO where it is additive. And I think it's hard to really understand that the first time you're raising capital, that it is a relationship that's different, because when you're in corporate, it's like, no, I can get another job. I can rotate out of the role.
You're part of your team.
Right? They're part of the team.
It's really part of the team. And when you're building the team, that yes, your investors are part of your team. Your advisors are part of your team. Your board is essential to your team. So are your legal counsel, your accounting people, right? All of this is part of a team. And if you're not, and your job as the founder or the CEO is like any great coach. You've got to know the strengths of every part of the team and bring in those players when they're needed and understand how to do that to keep accomplishing the goal. So with your board, you figure out what your goals are. With the other parts of the team, you figure out what to do. But the investors are a key part. Many times those investors are on your board. They are part of your advisors. And again, they've got access to additional resources that you don't even know about.
Yeah.
And if you're not communicating with them and building that relationship, you're losing out. And that also gets back to being, frankly, candid and vulnerable about all the news, not just the good news, the bad news, right? Here's everything that's going on so that they can help you. If you're not in a marriage, in any relationship, if you're not sharing fully with your partner and something bad is going on and you're just kind of ignoring it and not talking about it, that turns toxic. And the same thing happens in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing is like all relationships are also work, right? And then when you have to work on them.
You have to invest in them.
Like invest in them, and you have to that means you have to communicate. That means you have, like you said, vulnerable. Like vulnerable means that you kind of admit that you made a mistake, or that we messed up. We did this launch, it didn't go according to plan. But just like keeping them, that's how you gain trust, is when you can be vulnerable. You can be honest with them, and you also show courage, because it takes courage to admit to a mistake, and most people are not able to do that.
Yep.
Tell us about a time when you maybe invested in a company and you thought you knew the person and maybe it didn't go according to plan. I'm sure that's happened. I mean, with the amount of investments you've made,
names.
Don't name anyone. We don't need to name them.
I'm not naming any
Yeah,
names.
but just
No.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm sure there are times when you're like, man, why didn't I see this before?
Okay. That's why many of the things that I said about spending time getting to know each other is so important, because everything sounds great in the dating phase, right? Everybody's on their best behavior. Everybody's charming. But there are always these signs that maybe they're inflating things a bit. They're exaggerating things a bit. And what I said earlier about ego, and that ego does prevent them from admitting a mistake. If I just work harder, or if I just do this next thing, it's all going to be fine. So yes, I am invested. And I will say it's earlier. And part of that is I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm a better investor. I'm a better judge today than I was 14 years ago when I started, right? I've definitely made some mistakes. And however, the other thing is, and this is true for all investors, it's easier to look at those things from 14 years ago. I'm making new mistakes today and I don't even know what they are, right? I could still be misjudging all kinds of things and I won't know for another 7 to 14 years. But really it's around making sure that I get to know the person better, asking them more about who they are as a person, why this is really essential to them, why they would rather, I jokingly say, they would rather lie down in the street and die than have this fail, right? That they have to make sure this succeeds no matter what. And in other words, what's truly driving them? What their why is? I think that's really essential. And is it, because there are a lot of people who get into this thing thinking, I'm going to make a bunch of money, I'm going to be famous, and isn't going to be great. And that's not a why. A why is, this is something deeply personal, something that you're committed to, something that if you never get an ounce of glory, you still want to see it succeed. You're never going to be on the cover of any magazine or anything else, but you still want it. You're still passionate about this. I think that matters a lot.
I think that like the last thing you said, really, I think if people could understand that they're not doing it for the glory or being on the front cover one day, because a lot of people like would want that, right? But a lot of times the people that we invest in or want to bring out for interviews and stuff are because they have some kind of something charming about them that people generally like them and people are attracted to them. But how do you kind of peel back that layer behind that charm that you might be seeing to like what's really the essence of this person? What's the real motivation behind what they're doing?
You know what's interesting? I've had the pleasure, because it's Han's 25th anniversary, of meeting some of the most successful entrepreneurs and investors in Houston's history. These are gentlemen who are mostly in their 70s and 80s now. And they are some of the most humble people. I'm saying, we want to honor you. They're like, no, I really didn't do anything all that important. I'm like,
that's very
you had
Texan.
a multi-billion dollar company in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
No. You really ought to go talk to this person and honor that person. It's fascinating to me how some of these incredibly, and they have been on covers. They've been on CNBC.
Yeah.
They've done all the things. But actually, deep down, they're so humble. Lloyd Benson. Oh my goodness. What an extraordinary man, and so humble. I mean, and I could go on down the list.
And those are the qualities that make them succeed, right? Because they're able to let other people be in the limelight and are able to empower and enable others. And that's really what you need in a founder. And that's what you said earlier about like, can they build a team around them? Because a lot of people struggle with that.
Agreed.
Thanks for listening. If you're fundraising now or know someone who is, I want to tell you about Saffron, our investor relationship management product for energy tech founders. Think of it as a CRM built for energy fundraising. Use our recommendation engine to find the right investors faster and then track every conversation and stay connected through your raise. There's a free tier, so you can start today at no cost. That's CEPHYRON.com. Now, thanks, and back to the show. I want to go back a little bit, and I'm curious, like, how do you see the passion? Because I think you were talking about like there are people who are charming. There's some people who are really good at putting on a face of like
they'll say all
being
the
a
right
chameleon
things.
or saying the right things.
They'll say all the right things.
How do you? And I because I just love all the founders who come through. I'm like, oh, this is the best thing. And and sometimes I feel like I'll meet a founder who's like so excited and they're like the consummate salesperson about like why their thing is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And then 3 months later they're doing something else, and I'm like, oh, I'm just a terrible judge of character. Like, how did I not see this?
So I think there are very famous researchers who will say that actually none of us are as good at judging character as we think we are. And I'm going to put myself in that category. What I will say is one of my mentors, a very experienced VC who's been doing this a long, long time, he insists on spending. So you get to know them through the first few meetings, but then he goes and he spends at least a full day and challenges them on everything. And he wants to see, because one of the things that we've heard, and so I'm quoting somebody, but I don't remember who, in 90 minutes, anybody can hold up a facade. It is much harder in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, lunch, afternoon, dinner, to go through all of that. So remember, when you go on a car trip with someone, that's where you really get to know them. Same idea, right? How are we going to spend? And so he does that in person with them.
That's the diligence.
And that's an essential. He won't invest without that usually because that's for a large check. This is not for a small, right? For an angel investment sometimes. But if you for a larger check, and I would say even for Han, because we will lead a pre-seed, maybe a seed, depending if there's something that we know and we love. We could put in, $500,000 or $1 million, right? If we get really excited about something. And at that point, if we're leading, you better believe we're going to do that kind of due diligence where we're really going to get to know them. And that's my best guess. And that, again, I'm stealing that from somebody who's smarter than I am. But I do think long durations. The other thing that they talk about, and they do this in interviews as well, they say, make sure that you meet them at least 3 times 3 different days in 3 different environments. Don't go into the same room 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
One time should be coffee, one time should be in the office, another time should be dinner or something like that. And experience them. Watch how they're treating the waiter. Watch how they're treating the coworkers. Watch how they're treating everybody. And you'll see something there. So again, it's about the amount of time and the engagement and remaining alert and attuned. But I'm with you, Jason. I want to invest in everyone. Everything in the first 5 minutes. I am such a Pollyanna. I'm like, everybody's going to change the world. It's going to be great. But now when you do dig in, the thing about being a venture investor is you're trying to find the red flag as fast as possible. And that can be the arrogance. And that can be the fact that they don't have a great team, or that can be whatever it is. But you're trying to find a red flag and get to know as fast as possible so you can move on to the next thing. And that's actually, I think they don't realize that investors need to do that, because we're literally being approached by hundreds of people all the time. And so we need to get to know fast, because we're not going to, if I'm going to look at hundreds of deals this year, I'm going to invest in 3 to 5.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just talking to the folks at Decar Partners, and they're private equity. Like, they're big. They're deploying $100 million checks. Same thesis for them as they. I was asking, why don't you use AI more? And they said, well, we need to be good at finding the red flags fast, because we have too many opportunities. And so even at that stage, a lot of the things you need to do are still the same when you're kind of in the venture side of things. So it's just very funny that skill you learn at the seed stage still applies, even as you get to larger check sizes.
So I was curious to know, I mean, you've been in a startup all your early career was within a startup, then you entered investing, been doing that for 14 years. What do you think has changed from like when you first started investing in terms of what you see startups doing, founders presenting, what investors may be measuring today versus 14 years ago?
14 years ago or 25 years ago? I will say, so from when I was a founder, there were not angels like me. Angels were people like Michael Dell and, those people. And so I will say 25 years ago, I thought you had to be a billionaire to be an angel investor.
Yeah.
Right? And it didn't. And then I knew people who had big exits, and maybe they had a couple $100 million and they were investing, right? Okay, they were doing it too. But it wasn't sort of normal humans like me. I really never saw myself as that unless I had a huge exit. And it took a while to realize that becoming an accredited investor, it's like, I kind of woke up one day, I was like, oh, I've been one for a while. I didn't even know it, right? I get, and then the evolution of I can start investing. And that I have something in addition to a check to bring. But you asked about what the changes are. So rephrase the question. Tell me again.
I can imagine there's like a change in the generations of founders that are coming forward too. Like how, millennials can be as founders versus like maybe Gen Zs.
Are Gen Zs founding companies?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
They are.
Okay.
I mean, those are the new
they are.
Mark Zuckerbergs are like, Gen Zers, I would say.
Well, remember what he famously said was, right, don't trust anybody over 40, and now he's over 40.
Oh, no.
It's like, there you go. I wonder if,
So, I mean, there's like, I'm thinking maybe there's a generational gap, and I'll give you an example. I was at my college reunion this past weekend, and I was asking my professor, like, what do you see different now versus like when we were in college? Because it is a different generation. And she said, we have to I had to scrap almost half to 1/3 of my curriculum because this new generation doesn't have the attention span of the previous generation. And things just have to be taught very differently. Like it has to be very visual, short bits and sizes, like the way she's running the classes.
TikTok for classes.
And like, and I'm just like, okay, so we were taught way more in our time than like what these younger generation are being taught today.
I can't wait to tell my kids who are in college.
And I don't know if that's true.
I just heard you don't learn that much.
And and what she also said was like COVID changed everything too, right? Because they had to take a step back in COVID. Everything went remote, and then like that transition back, like maybe it takes time for it to like go back up again because it's still like,
or it'll never be the same again.
Or maybe it'll never be the same again.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think there's a difference between what they're having to deal with in college. So I'm an associate at my alma mater as well, and I talk to the professors and the administrators there, and there's a huge change, right? Literally, students call them in the middle of the night. I can't take my exam tomorrow morning. First of all, they call them. Second of all, in the middle of the night. Third of all, asking not to take an exam. And half the time they say, okay, we'll let you reschedule. I'm like, none of that happened.
Yeah.
None of that happened. It was a sink or swim environment. And you know what? I am so grateful because I don't think that's doing them any favors whatsoever. However, the founders that I know, regardless of age, they can't be like that. That's not a founder.
Exactly.
That is not a founder. I actually think regardless of age or stage, that great founders who are 22 or 42 or 62, they all have passion, they have grit, and they have tenacity, and they have the creativity to keep solving the problem. And if they don't, they get out pretty darn quick. Right? We all know, we meet tons of founders all the time. There are so many people who do it for a year and they're like, crap, this is hard. I'm not doing this anymore. Right? It's because it's even harder than they thought it was going to be. They all say, oh, I know it's hard. Of course it's good. No, it is way harder. It is 10x harder than you think it is. And so the people who succeed, and we all know 22-year-olds who are doing this, right? We can name some. And they're not like their peer group. But then again, the great founders of 25 years ago were not like their peer group, right? Yeah. Founders are different. And they're also, and I talk to people, an entrepreneur is a broad category. There are lots of small business owners who are creating great businesses. They're not venture scalable. They're not venture backable. So in my world, that's not a founder, right? They are entrepreneurs. They're business owners. They're doing great things. It's a different kind of a business. They can capitalize with bank loans and lines of credit and friends and family money. And then they, do their cash flow and it's all going to be fine. And God bless, some of them grow to huge, wonderful companies. I was talking to someone about, companies like that then IPO. So Insperity, right, was not a venture-backed company. But when it was Administaff, they probably had some, I don't know the full story, but they grew, eventually IPO'd. So I was talking to one of their former executives from the IPO team. They weren't venture-backed. They didn't need to be. They just grew a great company and execution. IPO'd, and they're still a great company. Yeah. And they never had a nickel of venture money, or I don't know if they had PE money or anything else, but they were able to do that as an organic business. And that is a great path. Not everybody should be coming after venture dollars. And I even think in the world of innovation that we live in, not every single company needs to go after venture money. Because again, there are high expectations. You're not only getting married, I'm expecting an extraordinary return. I'm looking for 100x return. Yeah. That's a big, scary number.
Yeah. And I think a lot of founders don't realize that. I mean, we've had, even yesterday, a founder came up to me and said, I went up to this investor and said, and I told him, my goal isn't to become that $1 billion company. And he said, okay, then you don't, then I'm not going to invest in you.
And it's just a transaction. Like it's not personal.
Then I'm not going to invest in you. Yeah. So, and it's saying that, that's okay if that's, because you can still be a really great company and still make a lot of money.
That's
and
right.
not take VC money. And it gives you that freedom. So it's like, that awareness of how else can you fund your company. I mean, bootstrap it as much as you can, have it, some kind of consistent cash flow that can allow you to grow, but like you said, in a disciplined way.
Yep.
Whereas when you're saying, I'm going to go the VC route, you are going for that, rocket ship. And you're saying, I'm going to 10x, 100x in a very short period of time.
And I think Shark Tank and other similar programs have done a disservice because it's made it so sexy. Oh man, I get these investors and it's all going to be great. And the reality is it's not sexy at all.
No.
It is a grind. It is hard. And yes, the exits can be extraordinary. But that's also why when investors keep telling you no, that it's okay. It just means there's another way that you need to get this done. And I will say a lot of founders, I feel like when all the investors say no, they're like, well, then I don't have a business. And I'm like, then you were never a founder. Because a real founder would go find another way. And they wouldn't give up, because if they got the grit and the passion, a lack of a check is only going to drive them harder to find a different way to do it. They find the money somewhere else. Whatever it has to be. Sometimes they go start a different business to fund the business they really want to do, right? We've seen that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, sometimes, we call it a pivot. And a pivot could be, just starting a whole new company, because whatever you were doing in that company that maybe did not succeed, you couldn't see a path to profitability and getting the revenues that you needed. But it pointed you to another direction that allowed you to maybe build another company. So it's like understanding that, you can't be, at least when I'm looking at founders, it's like you can't be too rigid on the value that you're bringing, because you don't know, because it's going to change with every interaction with the customer as you get feedback on what is it that the market wants, what is it that the market values. And it changes from year to year too, because the market changes.
Oh my gosh, the market changed so much this year.
Yeah. And it will continue. Yeah. And honestly, that's another thing that you're always talking to founders about. It's like, can you survive when everything changes? Policy changes, administration changes, tax breaks change, everything changes. So back to, are you building a truly sustainable business that can survive all that? And
which means
hard,
you have to be agile. You have to pivot, right? Yeah. Like, because you could be building something that's for today's environment, but the tomorrow environment could be different.
Exactly.
That means you have to change everything in the flip of a coin.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to ask, just honing in a little bit on Houston, and the energy transition. Like, we were talking about energy transition all the time here. Like, it felt like a year ago. Obviously since Han started 25 years ago, a lot's changed in terms of, like, we don't even have HTC anymore, but we have the Ion District. Yep. And we have all these things that are coming together. Where do we need to get to next, I guess, in terms of as an ecosystem?
Okay. Well, and I will say, the organization that inherited the mantle from HTC is actually Houston Exponential.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that does exist, and we collaborate a lot. We love working with Houston Exponential and the Ion and Grid. So Han works with everybody. We're the investors and everyone in the ecosystem. But your question was, what needs to happen next in the ecosystem? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, and honestly, if you want to reflect on, like, where we are today and how that has felt over the last decade, we can start there and then paint the future.
And what are you excited about for Houston that's coming? Yeah.
So for me, it's not just Houston, it's Texas.
Yes.
I look at the whole state, because when you put the pieces together of Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, and then honestly, the Valley and Corpus Christi and what's going on in Alabama, you put it all together, Abilene, my goodness, everything that's going on, you've got almost everything you need when you put Texas together. Now, Houston plays an essential role on, as we say, everything that's really hard to do, right? We can scale. The joke is, here in Houston, it's like, okay, you want a digital startup? Go do that in Austin. But if you want to build an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the people in Houston can do that.
They can build it.
We can do that. You want to go put a colony on Mars? We could do that.
Yes.
These are the engineers, the doers, the builders who can make it happen. For great innovators to thrive here, I think when you look at where we were 25 years ago and where we are now, oh my goodness, the progress is fantastic. And yes, since with Houston Exponential, the Ion District, all of these things, TMC's been doing amazing things. It's all still growing. What I try to remind people is, but we're not operating in a vacuum. While we've come an enormous way in 25 years, so did Detroit, so did Chicago, so did Los Angeles, so did Atlanta and Nashville. My goodness, right? All of these communities are also growing and doing. For us to be competitive in the spaces that we want to dominate in, we need to keep at it. Like, don't slow down, double down. And so I would say we need more programming for founders. We need more capital mobilized locally, not just in Houston, but across the state. We have more venture capital than we did 25 years ago. Hallelujah. Do we have enough? No way. No, we need a ton more. The number of companies that still have to go to the coasts to get funded. Some of my favorite founders here in Houston, especially with 5-7 years ago, they were going to the coasts to get funded for things that are so Houston. I will not say the names because I don't want to call anything out, but to me, that's one of the big things that I want to see solved. So as part of our 25th anniversary, we're going to be doing a big dinner at the end to get more investors excited. We want to talk about where we were, where we are, and where we're going, and get more investors invigorated and ready to do this. I think more normal humans need to do this. And then honestly, more of our billionaire class needs to get more passionate about this. But also, Han is around to support the founders. So we're going to be doing some founder-focused events. We want them to know basically what this whole conversation has been. What are investors truly looking for? How can you be successful? What can we do to support you in this journey? So I think it's going to be everything we're currently doing, all of the different parts of the ecosystem, continuing to expand and don't lose momentum. So when we look at startups, there's growth, there's momentum, and then there's the acceleration, right? And so and I think it's the same thing for our ecosystem. We don't just want to be growing, we want to accelerate our growth and make sure that it's not plateauing.
And because I want to bring it back to energy, because we talk about energy and climate.
Yeah.
Are there specific things around energy that we should focus on today? And maybe to caveat that a little bit, I think a lot of the trends we were talking about here in the last year have shifted, right? Like there's been a big focus and a defocus on hydrogen. There's been a big defocus on carbon capture and storage, but there's been a huge shift in focus on how do we power data centers, how do we build stuff in Houston, and I think as a ecosystem. The last year, we've kind of been looking at each other going, okay, what do we do next as an energy supporting ecosystem? And I'm curious, what have you been hearing or seeing that is starting to react, I guess, to that shifting environment?
That's a great question. First of all, I think we always should have had an all the above strategy. And I think to get focused too narrowly on one or two technologies when we knew geothermal's happening, nuclear's happening, right? All these are complementary technologies that we should have been focusing on all along. We obviously have some of that here, which is great, but we should have more. And I think, hydrogen's not going away. Carbon capture is not going away. It's just not the pure, huge focus that it was. And so I will say as an investor all along, I was looking at all of them. I think we have to have a more holistic view of how we're going to power the future. I don't remember his name, but there was a wonderful speaker I heard last year, and he was talking about energy needs to be abundant, it needs to be accessible, and it needs to be affordable, not just in the United States, but globally. And that, people on other continents have the same need, that their progress is completely dependent on them having access to plentiful, reliable, affordable energy. And how are we solving that? And that's got to be in an all the above strategy. Now, as long as we're going to keep using fossil fuels, and that's going to be a while, especially natural gas, we want to do it in a responsible manner. But then on top of that, we can stack all these other things. And there's no doubt data centers and everything in the AI race. Yes, that means we need more power. It also means we need to get smarter about the grid. So as an investor, we're looking at the technologies that can help us make our current power production more efficient and use it well. But also then obviously there are people who need to be building out new power infrastructure, right? That's going to be the nukes and everything else that's going to be going into that. And there's some really exciting things going on in Texas and beyond. But then as an investor, we're looking at, obviously, an angel check is not going to build a nuke, right? You need billions of dollars, not what, like I said, not our $1 million check, but all the things that run those services, that load balance, that make it more reliable, new battery chemistries, new storage chemistries and things like that. That's all things that we're looking at. Anything around distribution. So basically how to, as we talked about last night, the picks and the shovels that are going to make the most out of these new power production technologies that are coming and everything that goes around how to make data centers more efficient. So,
yeah. Awesome. It's interesting you said angel checks aren't going to fund the next nuclear system. But and these aren't angels, but I saw some data come out at RPE that actually...
I mean to build them, right?
Not to build them.
The huge capital intensive projects, right?
I was going to go somewhere else with this. What's really funny is they were showing the data on who's funding fusion.
Yeah.
And something like $13 billion has come into fusion, none of it from government. And none of it, very small amounts of it from venture. It was a lot of it coming from private capital, but obviously not angels, but like large
little angels, right? There, right? Mark Cuban's an angel.
Yeah.
Right?
But we're talking about big angels who are doing fusion.
Right, the super angels, right?
That's the super angels.
Those guys.
The multi-billionaires.
It is so funny that like as a vertical, that one
and those are the people that need to be funding it. That's exactly right. They can take that risk and they can and to them, right, put $1 billion in that. My God, the ROI will be insane when it comes.
When it comes out and it's the lowest cost producer.
And then I'm going to produce the software to control it. I mean, right? That's what I'm funding.
It's funny, but like I also saw an article in the New York Times that showed how in the past 20 years, before like billionaires were like maybe maximum billionaires had like a net worth of 20 billion. And most of them were like 10 billion.
Oh, the most today, they had was like
the
20
most,
billion.
right? Okay, Today it's 200 billion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And if you see that, I had a list of like the top 10 billionaires in the US, it's like 200, 190, 180. Like these people have like lots of billions so that they can invest 1 billion in fusion, which like a decade ago, you could not do that. But it's just also is the result of the accumulation of wealth that has taken place amongst private individuals versus like, before the government would fund things like that.
Yeah.
Well, and I still think, obviously the government's going to keep funding some things, right?
Yes,
we've got
course.
NSF engines still coming, right? They're going to be not as many, but those are still happening. And that's really important, right?
Yeah, and we need that to happen, right?
Absolutely. And funding is still going to universities for foundational research.
Right.
So thank goodness, because that's not my check, right? They may say, oh, but we could do a lot with $100,000, but that risk and I have to wait 30 years? No, that's got to be government money or
yeah. So if I can actually be a little political, you said something earlier about this is about all of Texas. And when I think about the support programs that the state of Texas provides, I think there's a lot of expectation in Texas that it's industry who takes the risk or it's private investors who really support the companies. But then when I look at other states like New York and NYSERDA is a fantastic funder of first of a kind pilots. These like things that are probably too risky for private capital. In Boston, they have Mass CEC. I just saw in Louisiana they're starting to support this Nexus program that has like both a private and public partnership. And I look at Texas and I think it's almost like an allergic reaction if you start to ask for that kind of support from the state level. And I'm wondering if this is a policy challenge that needs to be addressed, or is this something where it's just this is the way Texas works? That's my slightly political question.
Well, we do of course have CPRIT.
Yeah, but
right. We do have. I know.
CPRIT really is about bringing companies into Texas, and I think it's a good strategy. But it's also just constrained to like cancer research, and I care about energy and climate. That's my personal stake in this.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for you on that. I do know that other states have. So I invest nationally, and I was I invested in a company recently, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to get matching funds from the state of Oklahoma."
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because they want companies to come in.
Yeah. Well, so it was federal money.
Yep.
Right. And I don't understand exactly how it worked because, again, we don't do it here in Texas. So it was new to me. But they said every dollar you invest, Mitra, will get matched as an investment by the state of Oklahoma. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And again, for some reason, Texas declined to do that. I don't understand all the reasons why. And it's way above my pay grade to even surmise why. In general, though, I think, I'm in favor of private capital doing these things. I do think we need to I think where we are very smart in Texas is about being business friendly and giving tax breaks one of my portfolio companies is relocating to the second ward, right? And he got tax breaks because he can show the job creation and everything else. And Houston, Harris County, everything was wonderful about creating a pro-business climate so that he could move there and do what he needed to do. And I think that's where, so I'm going to lean into that, but I would defer to the GHP on the other bigger question because that is, again, beyond my pay grade. So.
Yeah, and I think at GHP, I'm not going to pretend to know all the inner workings and positions, but there was a focus in the early days of making sure the ecosystem was strong, and the place where the biggest impact can be is helping those kind of Series B companies land, because they're at the phase where they're actually manufacturing things. That's where I think that's where you can get these benefits for coming into an economic zone.
Yeah,
can be very beneficial because you're starting to make stuff and you're hiring local talent, and so that is the right strategy for where GHP should focus as an economic development engine for the space. Yeah.
And again, why Texas makes sense. So one of the books that I really enjoyed a few years ago, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. Peter Zahn. Did you read that one?
No.
Oh gosh. I really like it. So don't agree with everything in the book. And it's like that big. But he talks about, and this is before all of the big changes, he talks about deglobalization and the impact globally, but especially and how the United States is going to come out. It'll relatively okay compared to everybody else. But as deglobalization happens, and so much of it is actually happening several years after he wrote all this, he did not foresee a second Trump administration and everything else that we're going through right now. But that Texas and Houston in particular is going to be the conduit to everything in the Western Hemisphere, right? We've got the port, all of Latin America and everything else, that this is going to be where goods and services are going to flow. And I think there's so much about why I'm very bullish on Texas overall. Do we need to be very smart and pro-business and making sure that we support all of our companies? You better believe it. So I agree with you there. But overall, I think when you see the changes happening nationally, I feel very good about what Texas can do, as long as we stay smart and don't make stupid decisions.
So I was thinking, I guess, to close it out, if you could kind of share with us what you're seeing in terms of deployment, especially when it comes to angels. And I'm sure you probably get some
You mean
data.
checks?
Yeah, in terms of, checks being deployed from angels. I mean, from maybe this angel association also provides you with data. Because, I mean, we've seen over the past couple of years, at least in climate energy tech.
Yeah, I'll share the fourth quarter last year, huge quarter for capital deployment at the VC level. And then I think we saw Q1, it shrank because of a lot of the conflicts that emerged. And we've also seen a lot of the climate energy VC focus in just fewer deals. So it goes
to bigger checks.
The later stage companies.
So that's VC money, right?
So the question is, are we seeing different or similar trends at the angel level?
For the angel level,
Even just within Han.
Yeah. And just your take on what is it that our founders can expect in the year to come?
Yeah.
Also, I mean, given that we're
going to ask you for the crystal ball.
Yeah. And any advice that you might have, I think that would be valuable too.
Bring me back. Don't let me forget to do that. So here, I'll just tell you what I think I'm observing. First of all, having done this for a while, there are cycles in capital, right? Where it rises and falls. And we are the beginning of that whole venture pipeline. So what happens in venture is very important to us because we shouldn't be funding things that can't get funded past us.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening there definitely has a strong effect on how we see things. I will also say, personally, as well as for many of our members who have been investing for a while, the perennially slow exits that we have been dealing with, I have so much capital locked up right now. If I could get liquid on some of these deals that look good on paper, and they look great on paper, I could then be deploying into a lot more. So that's just to kind of frame things up. The other thing that's happening, and there's everything has a pro and a con, right? There's a double edge on everything. So AI is sucking so much of the oxygen of all the deals, right? We know, 6 companies are getting the majority of it, but everything else around AI, there's a lot of capital moving into that, people trying to figure out what to fund there, which means energy and climate and life science and lots of other things are not getting funded the way that they used to. And so there's a pruning effect. First, a lot of companies are not able to make it. That's not all bad. Unfortunately, it's painful. We don't love it. But honestly, that pruning has to happen. When there's too much capital in the system, and there has been at periods, then we're funding things that are really speculative. Probably we're never going to make it anyway, but people are like, I need to get in deals. And they're throwing money into stuff. So some pruning, unfortunately, it's painful but healthy. The things that are still getting funded, I will say from my perspective, we're getting to look at opportunities that normally we wouldn't get because they're in a bridge round. A couple of them are in a down round, but they're still great companies. And if we see a path to helping them get to profitability and an exit, then they're still fundable. Now, that might mean changing out some of the management. It might mean a few other things, but the neat thing is that we're getting to see some extraordinary companies that normally would not be talking to us. Slightly later stage. Also things that normally they just get money like that, right? Or that's what it's been for the past few years. And now they're like, we're talking to you. Like, we're great. Come talk to us.
Yeah.
So then back to what you said, advice to the founders. So into this, number one, you've got to have that passion and that grit. I meant it what I said earlier. I truly believe that, the famous statistic, 9 out of 10 startups fail. Everybody says it all the time. And that is actually a fact. I think that for good companies, the success rate should be more like 60%. Because I think founder determination, founder creativity, and being willing to do whatever it takes, and that might be, right, hey, I can't get an angel check, I'm going to go find another way to fund this. As long as you can survive long enough and you care enough about what you're doing, you'll find a way. But you also have to make sure you really have a market and you really have a way to make money. I think sometimes we fall in love with our technology and we forget, if the market keeps saying, we're not buying, we're not buying, we're not buying, something's not working here.
Yeah.
Is there a way to pivot and change your product so it's something they will pay for? You've got to figure that out. The graveyard is filled with genius ideas that could make the world better. But no one will pay for it because they've got to answer to Wall Street too. So if no one's going to pay for it, you don't really have a business.
Yeah.
So that is what my advice to founders is. You've got to have a way to know and really convince your investors as well. Customers are dying for this. They're pining for it. They'll pay me money for it. Once we land, we can expand. They'll pay more for it. And then there's some sort of an exit path. The exit path is really important as well. Again, it doesn't have to be angels are looking for exits just like VCs are. However, there are the kinds of angels we are. There are other kinds of investors, business investors and friends and family who might want to invest in a cash flowing business. Do you really not want to go the venture route and go back to build a sustainable business? Some of the biggest and best businesses we know were started that way. They cash flow, everybody's getting dividends, and you own it for the rest of your life and you pass it on to your children and your grandchildren, right? That's a beautiful thing. So I hope that answered your question.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I have a follow-up question because I think you had your friend visiting and we were talking about like secondary markets, and I know this is a thing that tends to happen more in California. and I'm curious, like, if you wanted liquidity, there's always the decision between holding versus exiting in a secondary. And I know nothing about it, but other than I hear a lot about it, and I'm curious if that's a thing in Texas or if it's a
growing
thing. Yeah. Okay.
It's nascent.
Yeah.
It's growing. There are platforms designed that are trying to design so that people can find a way to find liquidity for their private shares. It's going to be really interesting to see how that all evolves over time and whether or not the SEC decides to start paying attention.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If you think about, they're not, right? Because these are all accredited investors. These are private companies. But at some point, if it grows to the point where it becomes a true marketplace, which is what some of these startups want to do, they literally are creating a platform for people to buy and sell shares of private companies.
Yeah.
And it can be people like me. Right now, it's happening. It happens at the billionaire level too. They're literally all, can I get pieces of OpenAI?
I've seen one of those secondaries come over. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, those are secondaries, but people are literally buying and selling Anthropic behind the scenes and stuff like that. I got to get in.
Yeah.
So all that's happening. And again, all AI companies right now, right? Because that's where all the fanfare is and where they think they're going to get big numbers. But if that happens, if a marketplace is created, how do you mark to market on private companies?
Yeah.
That nobody knows, right? Companies half the time, and I will say the evolution of safes. Companies half the time, our valuation is blank. I'm like, and what is that based on? We said so.
The safe says so.
Right. And tomorrow it'll be double that. I'm like, really? Based on what? We said so. And we found an investor who would sign it. I'm like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. And I think so secondaries, yes. I'm optimistic that there will be a way to start getting liquid in some of these things because a lot of people don't want to IPO because of the burden of being a public company.
It's expensive.
Right? Yeah. So we know lots of people who would rather stay private. Well, okay, then for investors like me, we do need a way to get liquid or do something, at least sell part of my shares. That's happening more and more. It's usually happening in private transactions. There are people who specialize in it. There are also a lot of not so savory people involved who, right? So there's going to need to be a way to find a trusted way to do it. And that the company has some control because they don't want random people selling shares of their company out to who knows who, right? Back to the relationship. They formed a relationship with me. If I sell my shares to Joe Schmo over here, now they've got to deal with Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
And he's got a position in this company.
Yeah.
And
usually there's a restrictive covenant in a private purchase that prevents that.
And so there can be, but they're having to think about it now because 14 years ago, that wasn't something everybody anticipated, a different kind of an exit scenario. Secondaries were not something we were really talking about at that point. Now it's something that's being considered actively, but it's retrospective for those. So.
Interesting. Well,
awesome.
Yeah, this is a fantastic conversation. I learned so much.
Yeah, really this is great. Yeah, I'm sure
it's
it'll be
wonderful.
Very
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I love getting to collaborate with both of you on all the wonderful things you're doing. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Thing that's being considered actively, but it's retrospective for those. So.
Interesting. Well,
awesome.
Yeah, this is a fantastic conversation. I learned so much.
Yeah, really this is great. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be
wonderful.
Very
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I love getting to collaborate with both of you on all the wonderful things you're doing. So
awesome.
Thank you.